Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the City Council meeting, January 13th City Council meeting to order, and welcome all of you. Happy New Year to everyone. And I'm asking Ms. Zito for a roll call. Oh, okay, I got it. You know what? I wrote, okay. We're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now we'll have roll call.
Vice Mayor Borelli.
Here.
Councilmember Clarici. Here. Councilmember Patton.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Here.
Announcements to the public. We have introduction of new police officer Bruno Gottsmer. Chief Heller.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. It's my pleasure to introduce our newest police officer. Bruno, why don't you stand up? Bruno Gottsmer, he's comes to us by way of Auburn, and he has spent, 4 years with Humboldt State achieving his bachelor's degree. He's also recently graduated from the Police Academy up in Eureka, College of the Redwoods, and he basically he had several options and choices, and he chose Placerville. So he's here by
Yay.
choice. So.
Well, we all welcome you, and we're looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And if I could also add, we have a new SHIELD volunteer that's with us as well. Mila, why don't you stand up? Mila Carrasco is our newest SHIELD volunteer, and so she joins us same time as Bruno. She comes to us by route of the Bay Area. Prior to that, Mila was a diplomat working out of San Francisco for the country of Honduras. She's a U.S. citizen, obviously, and she is a very, very volunteer-minded person. She's involved in chamber activities and other things, and she also has a degree in psychology. And anyway, we look forward to getting her on board with our SHIELD volunteer program.
Well, how are we so lucky? Thank you. Thank you for volunteering. Okay, then we have Police Department Strategic Plan PowerPoint presentation. Again, Chief Heller.
Okay.
Chief, I think
Yeah.
there's something wrong with your mic. It's
Is
not,
there? How's?
If you get up close, maybe.
Make it work. Okay, we'll move through this pretty quick. We've been working on this for quite some time. A lot of this you'll recognize as various things that are going on. We thought it was important to put this into a document and memorialize it so that we can track where it is we're moving from and where it is we're moving to, and be able to measure along the way. So this is a conceptual outline of our 2-year strategic plan. After the council is briefed on this, we'd like to work a little more internally on aligning our goals with this plan, and also work internally on implementation plans. So without further ado, as it states up there, as a police department, we readily recognize we are in the service delivery business. Our product is service, our customer is our community, and we will strive to produce or provide the finest quality of service we can to our community. And there's a short quote there from Robert Peel, father of modern policing. The plan is broken down into 4 focus points: community service, professional development, internal operations, and capital improvement. And we'll start off here with community service and some of the objectives under that focus area. First of all, our emphasis is to increase utilization of the community policing philosophy. This involves finding creative ways to partner with the community and various community-based organizations, faith-based groups, et cetera, to increase our public trust with the community on various ventures. At the core of this objective, what we'd like to do is reestablish an emphasis on officers, supervisors, and commanders being held accountable to various neighborhoods throughout the city. So it's sort of a geographic plan which we will begin to implement, which will involve area commanders and supervisors and officers that will be points of contact for individual neighborhoods, which will increase communications between the officers, the communities, as well as solving long-term problems. Because as you know, we come in quite often, 5-minute, 10-minute call, put a Band-Aid, and then quite often we come back several times the same week. This would provide a mechanism whereby we could achieve long-term solutions to some of our challenges. We also look to improve police technology and our social media presence. As many of you know, we have an app which is loaded with a lot of different modules that are pretty cutting edge. We also have a presence on Facebook and Twitter, and we've used those for various operations, putting out updates, and it's been very effective. With some of the suspect pictures from parking garage burglaries and whatnot, we've had some pretty good success in that area. We also look to take our current technology in our vehicles, which primarily being our in-camera technology, and moving that forward to the next generation, which is body-worn systems. And so there'll be more to come on that in the coming weeks. Downtown foot patrols, park and path patrols, this is a recognized priority that the community has communicated to us. We heard this quite a bit on National Night Out as well. And so we've already begun to act upon this. We have bicycles currently at the department being outfitted, and the officers identified to begin that program of enhancing bike patrols along the bike path to minimize environmental impact and to maximize the quality of life along that path. So that'll be coming about rather quickly. The downtown foot patrols, we aim to couple this with our reserve program and to increase a presence in downtown during special events and whatnot. As many of you know, we were able to bring back a school resource officer position this last budget in partnership with the 2 school districts in the city. We look to maintain that, and we have ongoing meetings to continue that program and enhance it. Traffic safety, again, that's a program we were able to put some work into this past several months. We achieved an $80,000 Office of Traffic Safety grant, and that has allowed us to increase our traffic focus and enforcement activities, including a recent DUI checkpoint with us, Caltrans, and assistance from Folsom PD, which was a very successful endeavor over the holiday season. The next area, focus area is professional development. One of the first objectives there is to pursue accreditation through a national accreditation association, being the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. The CALEA accreditation strengthens an agency's accountability both within the agency and the community through a continuum of standards that clearly define authority, performance, and responsibilities. Likewise, CALEA accreditation facilitates an agency's pursuit of professional excellence. It brings transparency to the agency, and it builds trust in the community. So we'll be pursuing that. We've been in talks with our region coordinator, and as you know, as the council knows, this was one of our items that was in the last budget that we worked on. Succession planning is another important part of our professional development. We aim to increase leadership throughout the department at all levels, and so the idea would be that our supervisors are replaceable, our commanders, our chief, everybody on up is leading within the department. So we're all replaceable at any given moment. The next one would be patrol workload analysis. The idea there is to effectively deploy our resources and constantly study how we're deploying our resources to find the best way to maximize those. I can say that pound for pound, I think the Placerville Police Department delivers a high level of service with a very effective cost. So I think throughout the state, you'll probably find that we're probably one of the most inexpensive police agencies for what you get for your dollar. Continuous professional training. We will continue to increase training, including a department-wide training plan to ensure our new officers receive the proper orientation, the proper skills to do their job along with industry standards. The next area of focus is internal operations. There's several focus areas identified here, including property management. We aim to increase the management of our property room in so much as updating some of the technology and making sure that we have routine audits and periodic inventories of the property room, as is expected. Also, watch commander follow-up. What that involves is closing the loop on contacts with calls and citizens, and taking the time to have the supervisor periodically circle back with the citizen and check how we're doing. So it's closing the feedback loop so we can measure how well we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is providing quality service. Next is establish a crime analysis function. We've actually begun to do this. As many of you know, the app, Placerville Police Department app, available on iPhone and Android devices, has a module with crime mapping. And so that crime mapping pulls directly from our computer-aided dispatch system and maps either by the prior day, the prior week, the prior month, or the prior year. I can tell you, if you go by the prior year, it looks kind of confusing because it fills it with a lot of things to be expected in any jurisdiction. But the advantage to that is both the citizen and the officer can focus on emerging crime trends. And so the citizen is well aware that there's something going on with vehicle burglaries perhaps in their neighborhood that they otherwise may not have known. And the officer also can realize that there's something developing in their beat. The next is establish a police reserve officer unit. That's been something we've been working on for quite some time, and we continue to work on that. That required a change to the Muni Code a while back. It required some working with HR and some recruiting efforts, and I'm glad to report that we finally have our first reserve officer in the pipeline. I feel confident that he will survive the background process and hopefully hit the street very soon. So I hope to introduce that person soon. Lastly, the last focus area is capital improvement. These include the police headquarters building. There's a few pictures up there I won't harp on, but the one's a property room in the center there. And I just want to say that our other city departments, our public works, have done a tremendous job in limping our facility along. They've patched things that needed patching, and they've done some very creative solutions. And so I commend them. The reality is, over the course of the next 5 years, we need to start thinking about some longer term fixes. How's that, Steve? Also, we look to improve our police range facility. The facility is where we do all our qualifications and range training. The backstop is in need of some reinforcement and some improvement, and the overall grounds could improve or benefit, I should say, from some improved lighting. And lastly, but not least, fleet management. This is an area that I think everywhere was kind of deferred with the economic downturn, and so we have been fortunate recently to get some traction with a grant recently and some general fund money to help with our fleet. So we've focused all of that on black and white patrol vehicles at this point. So at some point, we hope to continue to increase that and perhaps implement a more organized maintenance schedule that addresses capital replacement of our fleet. So that sums up the conceptual 2-year strategic plan for the Placerville Police Department.
Thank you very much. That's a great report, and I'm sure we're all in support of it. And I'm just going to go to the capital improvement and tell you that I am just sick that we fell 9 votes short from being able to give you some money to help with this, because I know it's a needed thing. Maybe next time. Would anyone on the council like to ask the chief any questions? Wendy?
I'd just like to thank you, Chief, and our entire police department. It was a privilege to see what a comprehensive agency we have serving our public on a pretty lean staff. And just take my hat off to all of you in our police department who serve our city, so very diligently. And I'm excited about the new programs that you're putting into effect, like especially the neighborhood program, the liaison. I think that will be a tremendous benefit to our citizens, and just want to thank our police staff. You do a tremendous job.
And I especially appreciated the liaison position, or that idea, that concept. I think it's really important to have a face in the department that a neighborhood can turn to, and that in conjunction with the mapping on the app, I think when somebody says, oh, there's been a multitude of vehicle burglaries in my area, and they can just look on their phone, they can call up Lieutenant Knight, or Captain Knight, sorry, Commander. Still got it wrong.
She'll get it third
They-
time.
They can call her up and say, there's been a multitude of vehicle burglaries, and she'll say, oh, look at your app, and there'll be one or two, and it's not a rash of them, and I think it's transparent, and I think it really does help when you have a face in the department that someone can turn to. So I really appreciate that.
Tricia?
And that goes for the school resource officer, too. That was really exciting, and I'm having a child in elementary school. It's really nice to see that we have an officer that can be a face and a positive face that children can see. That was good.
Thank you. John? I'm good. Okay. Thank you again. Okay, next, we have a couple of add-ons. Ms. Zito is going to talk to us about city recruitment for committee and commission members.
Yes, as you're aware, every odd-numbered year, by March 1st of every odd-numbered year, our committee, commissions, and boards have expirations of terms. Those terms are for 4 years, staggered to coincide, similar to what the council does. And since we had a majority of council members elected with 3 seats in November, every committee, commission, and board has at least 3 seats up. Some of our committees, commissions, and boards have had resignations midterm. And so we have unexpired terms to also fill. So there are flyers in the back of the room regarding the vacancies, a little bit about each of the committees that we're seeking to fill. I sent a media release to Wendy Schultz today for publication in the Mountain Democrat, and hopefully in the next day or two, the notice will be up on our website with the appropriate application linked to this media release. There's a different application form for each committee, commission, and board, primarily because there's different residency requirements or different compositions. And if potential applicants have some questions, I am more than happy to answer their questions on the 4th floor of City Hall. I also have application forms if they'd like to pick one up for me. And the deadline for filing will be February 6th, which is a Friday. We close at 3 p.m. on Friday, so by 3 p.m. on February 6th. And I'm hoping to schedule interviews for both Planning Commission and Recreation and Park Commission, which is the full council, in the last 2 weeks of February so that these folks can start serving as of March 1st. So thank you for the opportunity to mention it.
Thank you, and I'm certainly in hopes that we're going to have a lot of people that are interested in applying for these. It's gratifying, I think, to the citizen. It gives you a chance to really see what goes on in the city and gives you a chance to voice your opinion on maybe some of the areas that you feel as though you have some expertise or you'd like to see improved or whatever. So I'm just really asking that you come forward and join us. Okay, I have one more. I'd like to call on Steve Yule to talk about the bridge, the freezing, and the remedies that we had during our recent cold spell.
Okay. First of all, I think a real shout out goes to our local Caltrans yard, Ed Ingram and his guys over there at on Upper Broadway. We spent quite a bit of time this spring trying to come up with alternatives other than a gate across the connector bridge at the lower end of Main Street over to Placerville Drive. And as a result of those conversations, we're trying a new product that's called Ice Slicer that they use on a lot of the bridges that they have that freeze. And so with the help of their expertise and their resources, we were able to test it out, and it's really working well. Our challenge is to get it cleaned up in between the storms and reapply it, but it's really been real effective. And it's just nice to have that resource right here in town to help us on some of these projects. Other things, just recently they helped us with the lane closure for our creek project. They're helping us replace some broken guardrails on Lower Main this coming week. They're helping us with signage for some limb removals on Mosquito Road next week. They just go out of their way. They provided all the cones for the chief's DUI checkpoint last week or a couple weeks ago. So our relationship with them is just growing and real successful. And so just a shout out to Ed Ingram and his crew with Caltrans.
That's great to hear. 3 cheers for Caltrans. Yeah. Okay, next we go to
Vice Mayor,
I'm sorry?
just quickly, do you want to mention that we pulled off item 3.3?
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah, we had an item that has been pulled and I think will be put on a future agenda. Okay, thank you. Okay, adoption of the agenda?
I'll move for adoption.
Second?
All in,
Closed session report.
was it on here? Oh, I had all my scribbling written over it and I didn't even see it. I'm sorry. Okay, closed session report.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Borelli. Tonight, the council in closed session approved a tentative agreement between the City of Placerville and the Placerville Police Officers Association. The agreement, although tentative nature in name, is binding. However, the matter will be brought back to the council in a formal MOU for adoption. Excuse me, it's a 2-year agreement covering fiscal year 2014-2015 and fiscal year 2015-2016. Some highlights of the agreement involve excuse me, a buyback of vacation time in excess of 200 hours for employees, a reallocation of the formulas for post-incentive pay and uniform allowance between the general fund and Measure J, a reopener due to the effects and impacts associated with the Affordable Care Act, a one-time $1,000 pay distribution to each PPOA employee, excuse me, and a senior pay rate of senior officer pay rate of $150.20 per month. There are other provisions in the agreement, and as I said, it will be put forth in an MOU which will come before the council. Should anybody be interested in the additional terms, a copy of the tentative agreement is available at City Hall.
Thank you. Okay, now we can go to the adoption of the agenda. Carol, you made your motion?
I'll make a motion, yes,
Do you
to
have a
adopt the
second?
agenda.
Second.
Wendy? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're going to go to ceremonial matters. Motion for the city council to adjourn the meeting, sine die, and appoint the city manager as temporary chairperson.
So moved.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Okay, at this time, I will pass the gavel to our city manager.
I don't need the gavel. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Or Vice Mayor and Council, excuse me. At this time, as chairperson, I will accept nominations for the position of mayor for this current calendar year, the 2015 calendar year.
And with that, it's my pleasure to move that we accept Vice Mayor Borelli as mayor for this year.
We have a motion and second to appoint Vice Mayor Borelli as mayor for the 2015 year. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. So with that, we will turn the gavel back over to Mayor Borelli. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, everyone, and I'll try and do a good job. Thank you. Now, it gives me pleasure to call for nominations for vice mayor. Do I have a nomination?
With that, I nominate Carol Patton for vice mayor.
I'll second it. Do I have any other nominations? If not, I'll call for a nomination, or call for vote on nominating Carol Patton, vice mayor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations. Public comment. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. State law prohibits the council from acting on items not listed on the agenda except by special action of the city council under specified circumstances. The mayor reserves the right to limit the speaker's time to 3 minutes. The mayor will recognize you, and when you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record. You are not allowed to make personal attacks on individuals or make comments which are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. State law prohibits the council from acting on items not listed on the agenda except by special action of the city council under specified circumstances. Please give any written material presented at the meeting to the city clerk for public record. Do we have any written communications?
None tonight.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Oh,
anyone?
Do you want to mention the one item that I handed you?
I was going to say, I have, Michael Drobish came in and gave us a note, and he said, just a thank you to the city for restriping Pacific Street at Cedar Ravine. The dual turn lanes should work quite well. And I also want to thank whoever, but I know that was one thing that we asked for, and I think it's going to improve that intersection a lot. Okay, anyone wishing to come forward?
Good evening, Mayor Borelli and members of the council. I want to congratulate Mr. Clarici for being elected to the council, and Mayor Borelli and Councilmember Thomas for being reelected.
No.
And
Re-elected. I'm sorry. I thought you were going to, okay.
And
Sorry.
may you serve the city well in this next 4
Thank
years,
you.
along with the other two council members.
you.
Now that the election is over and the campaign signs are gone, I just wanted to state my frustration about campaign signs. It just seems to me that over the last few years, they've gotten worse and worse. And speaking from someone from experience who was responsible for campaign signs, I always tried to follow the rules, but I have seen so many signs that are on places where you doubt if someone even got permission. They're just stuck up anywhere. And it gives a message that anything goes, and that once the campaign signs come down, that that other people and businesses can put signs wherever they want. It's just really, it's kind of contagious, and it doesn't reflect well on the city. And I know that you're limited in what rules you can have, but also one of the things I had thought at one time that the county had a rule that you could only put them in the district where you're running. And I remember that from many years ago. Now it doesn't seem to be that way. People running in District 4 or District 2 like to put their signs in Placerville because a lot of people come through here, but I don't think that that's fair to the city. I know that South Lake Tahoe has a form that people fill out, and they pay $154, and after all their signs are down, then they can send in a request to get their $154 back. But one of the things that they say, and like I said, I don't know what rules you can do or just etiquette you can ask for. But in South Lake Tahoe, it says, it's required that placement of any political sign needs the property owner's permission, which I think is really important. There's a lot of vacant lots that get signs. This means on any property, residence, business, or a vacant lot. And political signs are prohibited and cannot be placed on any city-owned property, and cannot be placed on any utility pole or city-owned post. And then Caltrans has their own rules. And they're not supposed to be in city right-of-way, but I assume they are. I just think it would be nice if we could take a look at it, and that the politicians and the political candidates could set a good example for the rest of the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I will tell you that we do have a form that we all have to sign, and it's promising all those things. So, but I think we'll look into it some more. Anyone else care to come forward? And with that, I will close the public comment and bring it back to the council. Next, we have the consent calendar, and ask that, is there anyone that would like to remove anything or pull for further discussion? If not, I'll ask for a motion.
I move that we adopt the consent calendar.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
would anyone in the public care to come forward and address any of the items that we have on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we'll move on to, we have no ordinances, public hearings. This is to consider an appeal by Sean McCartney, Western Slope Boys and Girls Club, to revise condition of approval number 3 and to overturn conditions of approvals number 11 and 28 as adopted by the Planning Commission September 2nd, 2014 approval of the Western Slope Boys and Girls Club project. Conditional use permit 2014-01 site plan review 2014-01 and environmental assessment 2014-03 located at 2840 Mallard Lane. Assessor's parcel numbers, and I won't read those. Mr. Rivas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As you recall, the last time that we considered this item, this was an application for a 14,567 Boys and Girls Club facility to be located at Mallard and Green Valley Road, which was approved by the Planning Commission back on August 19th of 2014. The applicants then subsequently appealed the condition of approvals 3, 11, and 28 to the council. The council considered the appeal at its meeting on October 14th of 2014. Following the discussion of this item, the council then directed that staff further seek reductions in the TIM fee and the street frontage improvements that were being required along Green Valley Road. Staff has met with the representatives at the site and has met with Boys and Girls Club representatives subsequently and discussed the project with them over the course of the last few months. With respect to condition number 3, which required the submittal of a final landscaping plan for review by the Planning Commission prior to the issuance of building permit, this condition was originally added by the Planning Commission. Staff is suggesting that the condition be modified to allow submittal of a landscape plan for review by the Planning Commission prior to the issuance of the construction permit. This would allow the applicant to begin grading of the site while working on completing the landscaping plan. Staff is of the opinion that the applicant is in agreement with the modification that is being suggested tonight. With respect to condition number 28, which originally required the widening of Green Valley Road to provide for a 12-foot lane and 8-foot shoulder from street center line to allow for an ultimate 40-foot road width. Staff is of the understanding that the reduced road frontage improvements that are now being recommended as part of the project are satisfactory to the applicant. The applicant has submitted improvement plans back in November 24th of last year, conforming to the recommended frontage improvements that are being recommended by staff. Staff is currently finalizing its review of these plans. Staff is recommending that the council approve revised condition number 28 as shown in the underline and strikeout in the staff report. With respect to condition number 11, which is the requirement of traffic impact mitigation fees, following council's direction to further reduce the TIM fees, the staff has recalculated the TIM fee based on an estimated trip rates that were submitted by the applicant. And the new fee, based on those trips submitted by the applicant, is now $56,382.50, which resulted in a reduction of the TIM fee in the amount of $5,657.50. The TIM fee was originally calculated to be $113,040. Staff is recommending that the council approve revised condition 11 as shown in the underline and strikeout in the staff report. I'd like to discuss some of the options that the council can consider. The following options are relative to the appeal of the conditions of 3, 11, and 28 for the conditional use permit and the site plan review. The first option, the council could, of course, uphold the original Planning Commission conditions of approval 3, 11, and 28 as approved. 2, the council could grant the appeal in part, modifying condition number 3 as requested by the applicant and as recommended by staff, and modify condition 28 as recommended by staff, and delete condition 11, further directing staff to return to the council with recommendations on city funding of the TIM fee on behalf of the project applicant with respect to condition 11. And then number 3, the council could uphold the conditions of approval as recommended by staff in this staff report as currently written, or the council could further direct that staff continue to modify the conditions of approval as would be directed by the council. With respect to the budget impact, there is none unless the council directs staff to further offset the TIM fee costs of the project applicant by identifying city funding of the TIM fee, now estimated to be $56,382.50. So with that, that'll conclude staff's report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at this time. Thank you.
Would anyone on the council care to talk?
Yeah, I have one big question for staff is, it says that we cannot, that the TIM fees are based on the land use and not the occupancy. But here, it's been recalculated to be based on trips, which is specific to the occupant. So how can it be both ways?
You have the option, when the interim TIM fee was adopted, it basically assessed a certain amount based on the square footage, based on use. And there's a table that has, whether it be commercial, industrial, residential, and then the fees are attributed based on that table. And there is the option that's given in the TIM fee ordinance that the applicant has the ability to submit additional information to the city, and then we have the ability to apply a TIM fee based on the trips generated by the project or based on the land use. And so the applicant has submitted the trips that they anticipate that the Boys and Girls Club facility would generate. Staff reviewed that. Staff was in agreement with those trips, and therefore we calculated a TIM fee based on the trips.
So it can be based on the specific, because whatever goes in there, this was the discussion last time, we have to stick with land use. We can't modify it, but now you're saying we can modify it. So we can, it just seems arbitrary. We can just choose our own number, would be based on the trips. If we can either base it on the occupant.
Well, the issue is, if you look at the ordinance, which you probably don't have a copy in front of you, so I'll try and describe it for you. City Code Section 8-15-5 basically provides for the traffic impact mitigation fee. And the interim fee has a number of different land use categories: single-family residential, multifamily residential, manufactured home, minor commercial, major commercial, gas station, and industrial. For land uses not listed above, the proposed fees will be $753 per trip for residential type land uses and $338 per trip for commercial or industrial land uses. And then there's another section of the code, if I can find it.
So that all had to do with land use, but the staff recommendation isn't based on land use, it's based on the occupant.
Just while what Pierre's trying to explain is there is an option, and it actually states there's an option for them to do a traffic study to determine the number of trips. In this case, we determined that they didn't do a formal traffic study, but they did some analysis and gave us those numbers. And there is an option to base that fee on the actual number of trips. And that's what in the first place, we used the land use or the business use. And then we went back and reviewed it, and now we've come back and recommend that we can do it based on the trips.
Without a traffic study. So can we can have findings not based on a traffic study? We could have our own findings, right?
Well, it's supposed to be based on a traffic study. I mean,
It wasn't.
it has to be based on the trips. And we felt that we both the city and the applicant agreed on those number of trips. They submitted them to us. The only alternative, short of agreeing on those trips between the two parties, would be to require them to go back and do a traffic study.
I've located the applicable sections of the code. So I'll go ahead and refer to City Code Section 8-15-7. It's fee adjustments. And that basically, under Section A, the developer has the ability to provide additional information to the city to look at a revisitation of the TIM fee just based on the table. And so, as I read earlier, for land uses not listed above, the proposed fee will be $753 per trip for residential land use types, and then $338 per trip for commercial and industrial land uses. So we just categorize this as more of a commercial use, because it's a very limited number of uses listed here. It's not very fine grain, it's more coarse grain in terms of the land uses. But the applicant was able to give us a very definitive number of trips that the project would generate. So based on those number of trips, we then just applied the $338 per trip generated, or per trip, and then that's what generated the TIM fee. So it wasn't arbitrary. It's actually a methodology that's codified in our code, and the city followed that.
Okay. So
And
we
so when they
decided it
submit the
wasn't.
information, then the staff has the ability to either agree or disagree with the information submitted by the applicant. If the applicant further disagreed with the staff's interpretation, then they could then further appeal to the council.
Okay. So we decided it wasn't land use, and we went with the table. That's
It's
what
based on the trips
Okay.
that were generated by the use.
happened? Okay. Thank you.
And that whole calculation is provided to you in the staff report in great detail.
Yeah, it is. That's great. Before we go any further, Steve, you're here. Could you take care of the air conditioner or whatever's going on? We are freezing to death. There have been several people attempt to find out what's going on. Thank you. Okay, does anyone else have any questions for Pierre at this time?
What if we do comments before staff? Before public?
I'm sorry?
We do comments.
Right, but this kind of would be a comment. That's what I'm basing it on. 'cause he
I
might
guess
be
what I'm suggesting, Madam Mayor, is that, we've been through this before, and before
Right.
we open it up to public comment, they might like to get a temperature of where we are as a council.
Right, and that's kind
So
of,
maybe
okay.
if we could have comments
And-
at this
right,
point.
and that's, I was kind of
Okay,
basing it on that, as long as Pierre's handling the, okay. Comments? You've made yours, Tricia.
I had a question.
Carol? John?
Yeah, I've had a chance to chat with Pierre at length about his report, and one thing I want to say, this is a very, very good staff report. The level of detail, the historical parts of it, especially for someone like me, I know about this issue, but was not on the city council when it was brought before, so for me, it was very good. I mean, obviously, the issue at hand is this $56,000 and some change, and how we're going to deal with it. And my only comment is, well, actually, a set of comments is, I want to make sure that when we make this decision, we make it so that we're not buying ourselves a problem down the road that we can't anticipate. I mean, obviously, this is a very worthwhile project for a very worthwhile cause. And I don't imagine there'd be much argument, I don't want to speak for the other 4 people up here, but I don't imagine there'd be much argument that this is in fact something worthy of doing. But we also have an obligation to make sure that we're not buying ourselves something with a vote or something with a decision that comes back to give us grief in the future. Now, we're adults and we can handle grief in the future, but I'd like to sort of go over a few things before then just to make sure that we don't have that. Yes. Oh, wow, usually I get asked to be quiet. In any event, I've read through the report. I do, in fact, believe that this is not just a transfer of trips from one place to another, unless, of course, the old armory and the buildings that were built as part of the Boys and Girls Club were somehow never used again for anything ever. And then you could make a logical argument that you're just transferring trips from one place to the other. So if they were raised or boarded up and there was no use, but presumably these trips will move to this new location, and the old locations, with any luck at all, will be used for something else. So we should all kind of hope that the armory and other things are going to get used for something else, but who knows? The other thing is that if the one recommendation is to use some other funding to put the money in there, that's $56,000 that we don't have potentially for something else that comes down the pike. Once again, it's okay that we use it or we do it if that's what we all agree to, but I just want to make sure that we all understand that, because some very worthy cause could come through those doors 2 weeks from now, and we would not have the resources potentially to address that. And so that's all my concern is. I do believe the TIM fee is applicable. I like the way that the staff has worked with the applicant to get it down to a more manageable level. Anyway, that's kind of it for me. I might think of something else to say, but that's it.
Wendy?
Carol?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said.
Well, I didn't, but then John brings up a point, and that was, are you suggesting that the city pay the TIM fees?
I think it's actually suggested in here.
Okay, because I'm not,
It's one of the options.
okay.
Yes, so it's one of the options, because the applicant, of course, doesn't want to. The applicant doesn't want to do that.
Okay, so you're not just saying the difference between the original TIM fee and this fee, you're saying flat out the $56,000 that they're asking for today.
That is one of the options in front of
Yeah,
us.
no, I read it in here,
Yeah.
it didn't come
Yes,
out
that's
in
what I'm referring
Pierre's discussion, and so I just wanted to be clear. I haven't really thought that one through, and it's not identified where the money would come from, so I would have a hard time. I feel like I'm speaking out of turn because we haven't heard from the public and we haven't heard from the applicant. But I would just have a hard time just saying, yes, the city somehow will pick up $56,000 and pay for it. So that being said, I'm not opposed to it, but I would certainly want to know where it was coming from and so on and so forth. Wendy?
All right. I know we've all wrestled with this a great deal, as has staff and the applicant. And first of all, I'd like to thank our city staff for their diligent work on this. I know all of you have worked, incredibly hard, and we appreciate you hearing the direction of the council as well as working with the applicant to make this possible. And I'd also like to recognize the Boys and Girls Club. What you do is extraordinary for our community, and we all recognize that. And I also, there are, as our audience, may know, there are a lot of our local people have put in extraordinary amounts of money, personal fortunes, to make this new facility possible. And that is something that we certainly need to acknowledge. And there's a lot of people doing an extraordinary amount for this. So thank you so much. And as Councilmember Wilkins pointed out, this at our last comments that a couple weeks ago, that where would we be without the Boys and Girls Club? Not only does the Boys and Girls Club support the families in our community and that allows them, to work and give their children a safe place that is, supportive after school and allows families to have a supportive environment. Children who are in compromised situations, it may be the only stable place in their life. And the support that gives our community is unparalleled. And I know, all of us recognize that this is very much a public-private partnership. And taking into account, as Councilmember Clarici talked about, our obligation to our city and our infrastructure and our policies, as well as our desire to be a strong community partner with those that are serving our community. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion. It can be done, and see if there's support, and then turn it over to the community for support, so they know where perhaps we might want to head. I was talking to Supervisor Veerkamp this evening. He called me, and the county, I understand, has a policy based on the fact that the increase of impact, if a organization is moving within the same geographical location, that the impact fees on circulation are based on that increase. And that, along with our, we might want to look at that going forward as being consistent with the county, because since we are surrounded, by that. Based upon that, in my calculations, I would like to propose that we decrease the traffic impact, the TIM fees, to $15,000 to the Boys and Girls Club. So I'm going to actually make a motion that we revise conditions 3 and 28 as recommended by staff, and that we revise condition 11 to reduce the TIM fees to $15,000, thereby making a contribution to the Boys and Girls Club project through a general fund reimbursement to the TIM fee program, and the remaining amount payable over 5 years.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Well, no, now open up to public.
Okay, okay, now you want to, okay, all right, okay. At this time, I'm going to open this discussion up to the public. I'm sorry? There was a motion and a second on the floor. We don't have to vote on it?
We can have discussion.
We can have a discussion first, and then we'll come back to. Okay. Mr. McCartney.
My name is Sean McCartney. I'm the director of the Boys and Girls Club. Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor and Council, and thank you for that motion. I'd like the kids to come up here, please. So I stand here with these kids that are going to be able to go to the Boys and Girls Club thanks to your support. And we really appreciate you guys stepping up and doing this for us. We had a big event Saturday night. There was 500 people in the room, and we were able to tell a story, and that story is about changing lives and making these folks feel better about themselves every day. And so I appreciate what you've done tonight, or what you might do tonight, and we're just here to say thank you. We really believe that we're hand in hand on this one, and it's not just our kids' Boys and Girls Clubs, it's not the Board of Directors Boys and Girls Clubs, but it's Placerville's Boys and Girls Club. And so to be able to partner with the council in this way is a big deal. And thank you, staff, and thank you, council, for your work on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate all the fine artwork. Anyone else care to come forward?
Sue Rodman, Placerville resident, and while my daughter is old enough not to be able to benefit from the Boys and Girls Club now, she's at Humboldt State, but the Boys and Girls Club, it seems to me, is similar to a school. It's a public purpose, and I think that applying TIM fees to something that's a public purpose entity is really inappropriate. We don't assess schools for TIM fees. Why would we assess the Boys and Girls Club a TIM fee? It seems to me that they are an extension of our school system, and a support to our school system, and a support to the community and the parents. And I would say they don't need to pay a TIM fee. They've already put in enormous amounts of money, as Wendy said, from private people to make this thing even happen. They still have to do the condition 3 as modified. They still have to do the condition 28 as modified. Both of those are going to be expensive to do. It would seem to me that TIM fees are inappropriate, and we should do what the federal government does for public purposes and not assess them a fee like this.
Thank you, Ms. Rodman.
Hello again. I spoke with several of you the last time I was up here. My name is Sherry Bagnell, and my son Thomas, who was up here earlier, is a very happy member of the Boys and Girls Club. And I want to say, as a parent with a special needs child, you guys have really, really gone above and beyond with the study that you just produced and presented. It was out of the ballpark. It was really good. It was fair, and it was friendly. I'd like to thank you for the time, for the matter that you've put into this matter, and for your help, and to let you know that we appreciate your doing the right thing for not only our kids and our future, but for our community and our town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Evelyn Veerkamp, Placerville. I don't have a position one way or another on the TIM fee. I found Sue Rodman's contribution very compelling, and I would have no argument with it at all, but I would like to ask Councillor Thomas what calculation she used to arrive at $15,000 as her recommendation. Thank you.
My name's Todd White, and I'm losing my voice, which is probably a blessing to a great many people. But anyways, I want to thank the City Council for reducing the TIM fees. And I don't want to ruin a good thing, but I do have a couple of comments on it. I find it interesting that the fees were $56,000 and now they've been reduced to $15,000. Not arguing that. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think
It hasn't been done yet.
Well, okay.
We're discussing.
All right. Well, hopefully it will be done. But I think the increased use for impact is a good policy. But I kind of would like a more, and this is a larger discussion, more of a set policy, because traffic. What a traffic impact fee is supposedly for is for an impact. It's hard for me to believe that a club that's been in existence for so long, that's located across the street, is creating an additional impact to the city. And you know, if the Boys and Girls Club leaves the Armory, I can't imagine too much traffic going in and out of there, even if it probably would have just as much traffic if it was boarded up. I don't know. I don't think we're going to be using that Armory for war purposes anytime soon. So I would just encourage the city to completely eliminate the impact fee altogether, because it doesn't seem, I mean, if we wait till next month, it might be zero, because we came from 56,000 down to 15. So I think we're moving in a good direction. I'm not necessarily in favor of a traffic study, because that sounds like it takes a lot of time, and it would be cheaper just to pay the $15,000. So I just want to reiterate the attitude in which the city is operating, and I think it's always good to operate in a can-do attitude, not one where you place, you know, don't be so worried that things might not work out, that we might experience grief down the road. We can't afford not to give the Boys and Girls Club a discount. By charging them what we had originally thought of would cost us more than the $56,000, because it builds an attitude that isn't welcoming to the city and doesn't encourage growth and young families to live here. So we can't afford not to give the Boys and Girls Club a discount. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to come forward? There's a familiar face.
Carl Hagan, City of Placerville, and a neighbor of the proposed site for the Boys and Girls Club. I have property on Placerville Drive that's adjacent to that, actually close to their existing facility. And I think this is the right move. I think that this type of funding, I think the impact is going to be insignificant, because compared to where they are already. I also think that it's an opportunity for us to, as a city, to extend a welcome thank you for another governmental purpose, like Sue Rodman said. I'm in agreement with Sue on that, and I think that maybe it's something we should look at, and maybe this would fit into a classification similar to a school or another nonprofit facility. I can think of New Morning Shelter. I know that that was a residential use, and they paid based on the increase in square footage there because there was a prior residence there. But there are other types of organizations like this, and this is not going to be the last time we run into it, hopefully, because we are the county seat. We are the city in the surrounding area, and it's nice to have projects like this within our boundaries. And I think it's a good representation and a good use of our city facilities, our city money. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to come forward? Seeing no one coming forward, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back before the council.
Madam Mayor, may I answer Ms. Verkamp's question?
I was going to ask you if you would.
You bet. I'd be happy to do that. That's a very good question. Here's how I arrived at that. The new Boys and Girls Club is 14,567 square feet, which is proposed. The existing club is about 12,000 square feet, so that's a difference of 2,567 square feet. I then applied that increase to the traffic impact fee of 7.76 as in our staff report, and that comes to a TIM fee of $19,919.92. I then took the credit for the existing church building that staff was proposing of $5,296 and arrived at $14,623.92. So I rounded it to $15,000. So that's how I arrived at that. So based on the increase of the square footage of the new building.
Thank you. John, you look like you wanted to say something.
Yes, and I think that I like the math. I would suggest that we, and maybe this is an amendment, I'm not exactly sure what Councilwoman Thomas had in mind, but I might suggest that we take, one of the staff recommendations was to use some city money, yet to be determined, and use that money to then pay the $15,000 into the TIM fee, and thus making it. So you'd have to amend it, or you'd have to clarify it, or was that what you had planned in the first place?
Well, actually, no, let me clarify my motion, that we are actually not reducing the TIM fee. Okay. We are partnering with the Boys and Girls Club. So they would pay $15,000, and we would make a contribution of 41-something out of the general fund payable over 5 years. So that's how that would work. Yeah.
Can I... okay, I'm going to want just 1 second. I really think we need a little bit of clarification, because I don't think a lot of people, and I'm including myself, until I got into this, understand this, where the city is coming from on the money part of it. In other words, that this money is going to have to be taken out of our general fund, that we are going to foot the bill for it, and why.
Well, just quickly, as in adding in what Councilmember Thomas has said, yes, we are not reducing the fee. The calculation that we did for the $56,000, we did change it several times based on different formulas and different calculations that we did, that we felt we can justify and are, within the bounds of the ordinance which we have.
And trying to reduce it.
And get it as low as we can, because we recognize and we want to help the Boys and Girls Club in whatever way we can. So what we are recommending is that based on this calculation that Councilmember Thomas did, we would ask for some contribution from the Boys and Girls Club, which would be the $15,000, and we will make a contribution to the Boys and Girls Club in the amount of the remaining approximately $41,000. However, we are recommending to the council that we do that over a 5-year period, which is doable and will not hurt our TIM fee or overly affect our general fund at this time in one fiscal year. So if you do the math, that's going to be approximately $8,000 a year. That will come up during your budget time each year. We will do that and have you make that commitment to repay that funding each year. So that's what the proposal is from Council, unless I think I said that correctly, from Councilmember Thomas, and that's what staff is fine with doing if that's what the council would like to do.
Councilmember Patton. Okay, not to throw a monkey wrench in the whole thing, but at the original hearing, the analysis was supposed to be based on new trips. They're at the very beginning. So is the 130 parent trips, 7 bus trips, and 10 employee trips, are those new, or are those what is used today?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Patton. I'm not sure I understand your question. What do you mean?
Okay.
Would you
Can
state it
I
one
think
more
I can
time?
answer it. Let me try.
Sure.
Those are new trips to the new facility.
So those are above and beyond what they're currently using
No,
today?
those are new trips to this. They're 2 separate facilities.
I get it.
And those are not above and beyond. Those are new trips they're anticipating they would have at their new facility. Total trips at their new facility.
So do we know what the trips are today at the existing facility? Because, and the reason I'm going here is because I thought all along that all we were going to analyze was the use it to the, so right now they're already using the Armory. And let's say they have 100 parent trips, and they're proposing now they're going to have 130 parent trips. That's only 30 trips per day more. Now, maybe that analysis wasn't done, I don't know. But that is something that can be measured, and actually what Councilmember Thomas did, that can be measured also. I just think that the $56,000 based on a credit from a church use, the church use to me really doesn't have much of any bearing because the use is moving from one location, the exact same use, to another location. I would be way more in favor of saying you have 130 parent trips today. You're going to have 130 parent trips in the new facility. So let's charge them only for the increase that they're going to use and not for square footage size and whether or not the church used $5,000 worth of impact fees. I think it's measurable. I think it's also, as Councilmember Clarici said, we're not setting a precedent to arbitrarily change the rules, even though we can, there's obviously an option to go from, to use a traffic analysis rather than a square footage size. I just wanted to throw that out there. And it doesn't sound like that those measurements are here. We don't know what the existing parent trips are for the Boys and Girls Club.
Well, from staff's perspective, the calculation of TIM fee isn't based on another location. The entire program is based on development of new development. So the TIM fees are always paid at building permit. And It's always, this is an estimated fee. They could come in with a slightly different facility, and then we recalculate the fee accordingly. But basically, to take that argument further, for example, if the city of Placerville was composed of all vacant parcels, and then the Boys and Girls Club was the first facility to develop a lot in the city and pay the applicable fee based on either the trips or the land use, but they pay the fee. And then they continually, every 5 years or so often, move to a new facility, building a new building. Then they could conceivably, theoretically, if you will, completely developed the city and only paid the one fee from the very beginning. And we would have no fees from any subsequent tenants or uses moving into all the existing buildings.
I don't agree with
No, that's fine, but
Okay.
just hear me out. Because staff is going to bring back the whole TIM fee program back to the council, and at that time you could probably look and reassess the program if you don't like the way we calculate the fees. We can certainly look at other ways of doing it. But it's based on new development.
Right.
Because when the Boys and Girls Club moves out of the Armory,
Right.
and there were no, TIM fees were never paid for the Armory. So there's nothing really to transfer even from that perspective. But some new tenant will move into that building. The only thing the city will do at that time will assess if the new use has a net increase in trips. Could be another use that could generate twice as many trips. That new tenant then would have to pay additional TIM fees at that time. But that's the way the city develops its infrastructure. As the city develops, fees are paid. And with respect to a school facility, we understand that this is very like a school facility, an after-school facility. The difference between this school facility and, say, a public school is The city doesn't even have the ability to assess a TIM fee on a public school. If a private school, not an after-school program, but a private school came in and located within the city of Placerville, the city would apply TIM fees to that school. So the school argument really is not material to this situation. It's because it's a public school or a federal school, the city wouldn't have the ability to apply the TIM fees. So that's the only way the city is going to be able to pay for its infrastructure over time. It's a 20-year, typically a 20-year time horizon based on capital improvement program of city-approved projects to meet future development of our general plan and land use. It's not transferred from one lot to another.
I heard you say that the armory, whatever use for the armory, the new use would be charged for the new trips generated. So that makes an assumption that the old trips are somehow in that calculation, that it's new, it's a new use. And so all I'm saying is, why wouldn't the uses that the Boys and Girls Clubs are already impacting our roads for, why wouldn't they get credit for those? And so we didn't have TIM fees 20 years ago when they went into the Army, or however, whenever they first started using the Armory. But I still think that makes way more sense to me. The increase in the use on our streets is what the TIM fees should be paying for. And I'll just leave it at that, because...
Yeah, the TIM fee, yeah, you have to, it's hard to get your arms around, but the TIM fee is based on the facility and the trips to be generated by a facility. So if a use moves from one lot to another, the TIM fees are paid for the development, for the construction of a brick and mortar building. Some new tenant's going to move in there, and we don't go back and then we're not going to, that tenant that moves into that building, if they're not changing occupancy, we're not going to apply any TIM fees. TIM fees have already been paid for that facility. If it were a bank that moves across the street to a vacant lot and wants to build a whole new bank, that bank is going to have to pay the TIM fees on that new building. The bank doesn't get to transfer the TIM fee it paid on its previous location.
Mr. Morris?
Let me just clarify a little bit, and I've discussed this. I think I'm correct in this. But if a new business, let's say, moved into the Armory, I want to correct a little bit of what I think Pierre said. If a new business moved in there and did not do any remodeling, any new reconstruction, et cetera, to the building, we have no mechanism to charge them TIM fee.
That's correct.
They could move in without any charge, right?
That's correct.
Even if
it's only triggered if they increase the size, do remodeling, et cetera, because that's normally charged on a building permit. If they don't do any building permit, we have no mechanism or no right to charge them a TIM fee, so that would not be
even
charged.
if their population increased and increased the mileage,
The
car trips or
that's
anything?
correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like we do need to review our TIM fee. Okay.
I have a question or a comment. We're just keep going around in circles, excuse me, trying to eliminate or reduce the TIM fees. Sounds like we have to, the $57,000 is there to stay. And now the question is, how much of that, if any, or all of it, do we want to pick up as a city? Correct. So we all know how great the Boys and Girls Club is and the value to our community as far as the reduce of, okay. We had the great stories, and that warms our hearts, okay? But if you just look at it just from a fiscal standpoint, just take all that out of it and look at it as a city. And our duty is to our taxpayers to spend the money wisely. So we're looking at $57,000. I heard the statistics. This kind of went a little bit strange because I had some questions for the applicants, and this is all. But I think in the meeting before we had the statistics on how much it is to keep a child in the program and how much it is if you lose a child. I think we only need to lose one child to have this pay for it, and that doesn't count the horror for the family. I mean, the things that can happen with the without the support of the community, without the support of Boys and Girls Club, horrible things. I mean, one suicide, one unwanted pregnancy, one eating disorder. You could think of anything, and at what cost? So, if the fees are what they are, they are what they are. I would be in favor of just. Can I ask for an amendment on your motion?
I'm asking the motion maker, yes, go ahead and
I
see
would
if she
ask
agrees
that
to it.
that you amend not to include the $15,000 to be imposed on the Boys and Girls Club, but that we would direct staff to find city fundings, and so we could pick up the tab as a city entirely.
Well, that presents a whole new motion. I mean, it's really much more than an amendment.
Can you reduce the 15,000 to 0?
I will agree to that amendment.
I will agree to a second.
Okay, John.
Can we then amortize this out over a longer period of time, or does it get to a place where it's kind of absurd for our perspective to do that? I mean, 5 years seemed like a very tiny length of time.
What we will do is we will bring that back to you. If that's the direction of you to find a way to pay that, we will bring that back to you and present some options to you.
Cool.
Okay, so I'm going to say, and I am, my heart is just with the Boys and Girls Club. You all know that. I worked really hard for them all these years, and I understand what all this is about. But I also, my heart is with the city of Placerville, too. And I know, and I think you all know, that we don't have a whole lot of money. So this is a tremendous sacrifice for the city, and it's going to be for our taxpayers. And I hope you heard the report from our chief and how we are in such need of a new, or redoing our police department. Our roads are deteriorating. Our city hall is falling down. We tried to get our citizens to pass a sales tax to help us improve that, and we were voted down. Unfortunately, we lost by 9 votes. So I'm going to say, when we get all this criticism about the city this and the city that, these are the things that we do, and here we are, you know, trying to do good on this. And so I'm hoping that when it comes time, if this sales tax issue is brought again to the voters, that you all will support us and help us to get this passed so that we can get things done. So that's my sales pitch, okay? But I'm sincere because I'm wearing 2 hats, and it's really hard sometimes, and this is one of those instances that it's very, very difficult. Staff, our staff, again, I know Wendy already acknowledged them, but I also want to say they have gone through a lot of work. They've tried so hard to make this right, and I appreciate every minute that they've put into this, and I hope you all realize that their work too. And so with that, I am going to, Wendy, do you want to say your motion again in case, so that, Susan, have you got it the way it's being, okay, maybe you could read it so that I can call for.
Do you want me to read it again, Susan? Or?
Thank you.
Okay, all right. My amended motion is that we move to revise conditions 3 and 28 as recommended by staff, and that we revise condition 11 to reduce the TIM fees to the applicant to 0, thereby making a contribution to the Boys and Girls Club project through a general fund reimbursement to the TIM fee program for the amount of 56,000.
$382.50.
50 cents.
There you go.
Amen.
I'll second that. I'll second that.
Well, we
I already
already have.
seconded.
Oh, I'm
we
sorry.
already have. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and I'm not going to repeat it. This, we need a roll call vote.
Mayor Borelli,
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patton,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Aye.
Okay, we have it. Onward and forward. Okay, I'm going to give a few minutes if some of you would like to.
We look forward to your new facilities.
We do.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Okay. All right. Next order of business. Oh, they are going to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks.
We want to.
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute recess and give everybody a chance to. Okay, would everyone please be seated so we can get the...
Don't breathe too hard.
Okay.
That's early on there. Oh, I see. So this is an old one.
Yeah.
Right.
We have.
We're going more formal, I see.
We've changed.
Can I go with my real name? Because that would be fun. Whatever you would like. My real name is Giovanni. It's actually.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I could go. Yeah, Giovanni. It's on my.
Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order. We have just under discussion items, adopt a resolution approving a consulting services agreement, amendment number 1, with REY Engineers, Inc., in an amount not to exceed $168,166 for engineering and construction support services for the Central Main Street Rehab Project, CIP 41412, and authorizing the city manager to execute same and authorizing city staff to release Phase 1 construction contract documents for public bidding, whereas additional funding is available and may be appropriated at the time of award of the construction contract if needed, and review and give preliminary approval of funding for Phase 2 pavement rehab and approval of the Phase 2 conceptual construction budget for said project. And I understand Ms. Neves is going to present this.
Good evening, Mayor Borelli, members of the council. Just wanted to provide you with a project update, kind of how we got to this point and why we're doing what we're doing.
Thank you.
Welcome, Councilmember Clarici. It's good to have you here. In February of 2014, the city manager proposed a report basically initiating the initial project assessment, trying to figure out what needs to be done in order to repair utilities as well as the roadway on Main Street. At that time, funds were appropriated to do the initial project assessment. At the June meeting, following proposals submitted to the city, a selection was made to have REY do the work for the design contract for the improvements. As part of their contract, we included basically a condition assessment where they actually TV'd with a video camera through the lines, check the water lines, check the sewer, and check the drain, so we have a little bit better of understanding of what we're actually going to find and get into once we start opening up the road and looking at the utilities. At that time, we moved forward with their scope with the understanding that we didn't really know exactly what we're dealing with, and so we wanted to look into that. So that was part of their initial scope, with the understanding that we knew that once we had a more clear defined, we could move forward. As the project has progressed, as you all know, and we've seen your faces at the meetings, we've had some public meetings where we've solicited public input. Amongst that is including a survey of the property owners, the business owners, the merchants, and residents located on Main Street, requesting some input from them as to what would be the most agreeable construction window that they could tolerate and with the least amount of impacts on the business. The reports and the surveys came back where February through April was a favorable time period, as well as early mid-May to mid-June. Those time frames avoided the heavy activities and functions that we like to host on Main Street, and in association with also the PDA and everybody as well. So we checked in with most folks, and that seemed most favorable. Now, when it came time to figuring out what the improvements would be on Main Street, we included utilities, which were obviously the water line, some sewer line repair, and grading and some curb and gutter repair to avoid localized drainage issues that we have on Main Street. That kind of construction window took approximately 4 to 6 months to do. As a result, none of those windows of time that we had received input from would actually work to complete all the improvements at once. And so we forward thought, okay, well, let's try phasing portions of the improvements to minimize the impact on everybody. So what came out to be a logical phasing was, excuse me, was to do the improvements for essentially the utility improvements, which we call Phase 1, which includes water line replacement and sewer line rehabilitation. And then we would then separate out Phase 2 improvements, which is essentially the street rehab work, any kind of structural reconstruction of the streets where there's been failure, where you see alligator cracking and everything else. So that's how we've moved forward that. And as mentioned in your staff reports, we are also looking at a potential Phase 3, which addresses pavement reconstruction and improvements in the Bell Tower Plaza area. We are working with EDCTA, who is a potential funding partner on that, and we're really excited about the concepts that we're starting to move forward. As with anything, you know, it comes time for them to get the funds lined up to be a partner on the project too. So that's why we're deferring the improvements around the Bell Tower to a later phase to allow a little bit time to get funding in order as far as that goes. But there is available funding for that. So to kind of follow up on what resolutions we're proposing, the amendment to REY's contract includes services that are more in line with the defined scope now that we know what we're dealing with out in Main Street, as well as separating out bid documents into a Phase 1 and Phase 2, which are two essentially two standalone construction contracts, as well as ongoing project management and construction support for both phases with a more clear defined scope for those items. And then the remainder is what we're proposing with the resolution to move forward with advertising Phase 1, which is the water and sewer project. With moving forward with Phase 1, we're asking that we be able to release it to go out to bid, and at the time that we award the construction contract, once we have more final bid numbers, we have a wholehearted, better sense of what the actual construction costs will be, and at that time, if there's additional funds that need to be appropriated, we have those numbers available. And I think that covered it. Oh, and then I apologize. The last resolution is to provide preliminary approval for the funding of Phase 2 and moving forward with having that subsequent phase to come later on this year as well. With that, that concludes staff's update of the project, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, before you get into it, can I comment on a couple of things I want to add to that? We mentioned, Rebecca mentioned that we may need additional funds. You can see the charts in your report that show what those funds may be for Phases 1 and Phase 2. Especially on Phase 1, since that's what you're authorizing us to come back with tonight, we want to make sure that you understand. And one reason we're not asking you to allocate those funds tonight is that part of the funds we will possibly request from the Measure H committee to look at, and they will be meeting on the 22nd of this month, and that is a chance, they'll have a chance to review that and make a recommendation. They do have some funds that are allocated to certain projects, but those projects are woefully underfunded, and therefore it would be years probably before we would have enough money to actually look for further at those projects. So it would possibly be taking money from one project to do this one, but it's not necessarily going to delay that project because it's already delayed due to not enough money. For example, I'll mention one is the sewer line in Cedar Ravine. I think we have about $400,000 in that project, correct, Dave?
Actually, it's the Clay to Locust sewer line
that's
relocation.
What, yes, in the Hangtown Creek, excuse me, thank you. We have about $400,000 in that. I'm estimating that project may be $1 million project. So it's not that it's underfunded, it's just that they wanted to allocate some funds to show that that was an important project. We are reviewing, though, I believe Rebecca has talked about some other funding sources, that project, in terms of grant funds, that project may be eligible for, that we can look at and we're pursuing. As you know, we've been successful with the CABI grants. And that's an area where we think there may be a good possibility of looking at funding there. So we're exploring all options for that. But anyway, I just want to mention that that's a potential funding source is Measure H. And then you'll also note that we put in here that water enterprise capital funds. There are also some water enterprise capital funds that could go towards that project. So.
Okay, any questions from council? on any of this.
I do have a quick question.
Okay.
Great staff report, Rebecca. Quick question. Excited that we're perhaps pursuing phase 3, going to be looking at that. That's exciting. When you say we will defer improvements around the bell tower, that doesn't include the small crosswalk from Centro to the newsstand that has been a difficult area in all of our public meetings. Is that correct, or will that also be deferred?
That will be deferred to phase 3. It's
That
part of an
will be,
all-inclusive. Yeah.
as we look at that whole area in its entirety.
Yes, we
'Cause
want
that-
to avoid any kind of throwaway costs.
Right.
And so it made more sense to look at it as a whole and incorporate
Okay.
that with it. We actually met with the gentleman who owns Placerville News this afternoon, myself and
Great.
the staff from REY, thank you. And he had some really good input. He even had a little sketch, and so we took pictures of it, and we're talking with him about how we can kind of configure that in a way that makes better sense for the pedestrian usage in that area.
We actually will probably have more options as we look at that whole area
Yes,
in
ma'am.
its entirety. That's
Yes.
great, because that is a problem area.
Yes.
Yeah. And I would just like to give a little shout out to our staff and Matt Boyer and Patty and Jim. The community meetings were awesome. And just really appreciated our public's ability and our shop owners' ability to business owners and property owners to really, flush this out and bring their hard questions and talk it out. And I thought they've been just excellent. So just really well done that will ensure the success of this really important project. So really well done.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerici.
I have a question regarding kind of a division between phase 2 and phase 3, the bell tower phase of this thing. So we're repaving the street. Will there be like a line where there will be like the brand new paving and then a bunch of really old paving, and then we'll wait for phase 3, and then all of the area around the bell tower, including this wonderful new crosswalk and all this other stuff, will get fixed? Or will the paving go around the bell tower and then we'll be adding nice things on top of that?
Thank you, that's an excellent question. In order to efficiently use the funds, we've decided that we will essentially basically draw a clear line in the street.
Okay.
And that will be the new pavement on one side, and on a temporary basis until the improvements for phase 3 move forward, we will then do the additional improvements on the old pavement. It's to reduce the amount of throwaway costs, which could be quite extensive in that area, around $250,000 just in roadway. And what better way to defer it and lump it together and do the entire plaza.
So then I'm assuming then that phase 3 would follow in fairly close on the heels of phase 2,
Yes, sir.
so that we would not like have this weird thing going on.
Approximately 1 year from phase 1 going out.
Oh, so then it would have, so.
A year from now.
So a year from now. Oh,
Yes.
then that would all happen. No, that's
Yes.
fine. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
That was my question.
Okay.
My question was just when do you see phase 3 starting? Because that crosswalk that Councilmember Thomas referred to is probably the worst crosswalk in the city, and I find it really sad that that's not going to be done with this particular phase. I understand the reason, but it's really sad to me. So as long as it's within a year, and as long as the public is aware of that, I think that's really critical, because they're going to see that line and they're going to go, whoa. Anyways.
Yeah. We are going to hold, as you recall at the last meeting, we mentioned we're going to have another public meeting February
19th.
19th, thank you. And we'll get into more on that at that time. Not a lot on phase 3, but we will talk about, hopefully we'll start to get it narrowed down to where we know whether or not we're going to be able to secure the funding for phase 3. Worst case scenario, if the funding does not come through for phase 3 and we don't make that work, we will do those minimal improvements, such as that crosswalk, as part of phase 2.
Oh, okay.
So we need to secure that funding prior to phase 2 going, so we know we're pretty confident we're going to be able to make it work. And then the reason we're looking at January, February, March, April as the time frame to do that is that time frame the business has identified is the best time to do the work. One caution during that time will be getting the temperatures to actually do the paving. That's one issue we'll have to be aware of in the weather during that early springtime. But we'll cross our fingers and hopefully that all works during that time. So.
Well, if we get the funding, and when we get the funding, but maybe we can put up a cute little sign or something to address it and just say pending, or further construction, work in process or something. So, Okay, any other comments, questions? At this time, I'll open it up to the public. Would anyone care to come forward and comment on this issue?
Placerville. My suggestion to you respectfully is that you table this, and I propose some reasons why. I've attended all 3 meetings, the public meetings, and a lot of the other meetings at PDA and things of that kind. And I'm even on the marketing committee for this project. And when I started looking at the report that we started seeing, the one that you've referred to in the last couple of days, there's just all kinds of surprises. Like there's a proposal, correct me if I'm mistaken, that you'd have a bus stop proposed near the bell tower. I didn't hear that discussed at some of the other places. If you want to defeat this paving project, pass this tonight. If you want to make sure that a sales tax increase runs into bigger problems in the future, pass this tonight. And here's why. People said in some ways during the last year, when you talked about a sales increase, that might not have been very subtle with the kind of, subtlety of Charlie Hebdo. But they said your problem is spending. It's not revenue, it's spending. Get rid of all the bells and whistles. 3 meetings that you've had where you've talked about benches that cost between $3,000 to $4,000, $5,000 a piece, and you got 6 of those, and someone says, well, that's just 6. It's like Charlie Simpson used to say, in Congress, in the Senate, he said his colleagues are big spenders. He said, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, it starts to add up. Symbolically, the way this has been done so far, it looks like you're taking a lot of money. You had, at the last meeting, which is typical of the first 2, you had 4 consultants who were paying about $150 an hour. And if it's like lawyers, they charge from port to port. And that's for meetings that when you had an engineer on staff, that person could have communicated that. And I've seen Wendy, you, and Cleve do great jobs at conducting public meetings. And Cleve can do the meeting just as well as Matthew. If Cleve is overextended, then you just need Matthew. But you had 3 staff persons, and you had 4 consultants paying a lot of money, and that's the money you've spent so far, allotted so far for this engineering company, exceeds the cost of the actual project, that is the actual paving. The president of the company that did the paving the last time put the figure at something like $300,000 to do just the paving portion. So at the rate you're going, you're going to keep spending money, 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 money. And if you were in business, you couldn't do business this way. When you start changing the plans as you go along, it gets much more expensive. Carol, I know how hard you and all the others worked, like Carl, on the streetscape plan. But if you had a water consumption plan for the city that you approved in 2005, you surely would not follow that same plan in 2015 when you have the worst drought in the state's history. In the same time, you don't push a plan, the plaza and things like that, that you did in 2005 when you professed to have a shortage of money. So scale this plan down greatly, or you're going to really have problems, not just in getting this passed, but getting your sales tax increase if you want to push it again. Because people will start to look at how much you spent. And you can't keep doing all the other roads in the town if you do it this way. And by the way, when I hear, and I know Cleve really works hard to reach out to people, but I see the same dog and pony show at, again, $150 an hour per consultant per hour. And at the PDA meeting, the last PDA meeting on Thursday, you didn't have a quorum. And even if you had a quorum where they could conduct business for the meeting that took place that night, they really just don't get much more than a small percentage of the people in Main Street. I know, Carol, you and the colleagues went around and around with all these copies of your report, but when I had this the last time, I'd go to merchants and I'd say, have you ever seen this before? And most said no, and those that had heard of it said they didn't like what they saw. So you're going to, and none of them know about this proposal for a bus stop near the bell tower.
Okay, Mr. Smith.
I think you just
3
want
minutes. I need to wind it
I
up.
hope you get the idea that I'm on the side of getting the work done. But if you want to sell it, you got to scale it back, and that includes the engineering fees. It's just a lot of money.
Thank you.
Evelyn Vierkamp, Placerville. I would be happy to have confirmation from whoever has the information that the consultant fees that Mr. Smith just gave us are accurate, because if they are accurate, and I've not heard them before, it's anxiety producing, and good luck on your sales tax proposal if the city is spending money like that. I have a kind of an umbrella concern about the project. Now, there's no concern about the infrastructure repairs that need to be done. I take that as gospel. I do not believe we're being misled. I'm sure our infrastructure is in a deplorable state, and the sooner we get it fixed, the cheaper it'll be. So I have no argument there. Where I'm concerned, and I don't have the information, perhaps I should, but I don't. I don't know how much of what is going forward is optional or discretionary. The stuff that has to be done. But I do not know. I mean, when I look at the thing that's being called the streetscape, which is now a 9-year-old plan, I look at that and I think most of this, for me, is discretionary. It's optional. The city's going to have to make some really hard choices about what it spends money on. We can't say yes to everything just because it feels good. I'm sure that the streetscape plan may have some positive spin-offs, but in a hard economic climate where tax money is stretched, there may have to be some things that get cut back. Before I get cut off for exceeding my 3 minutes, and I know the mayor is very keen to make sure that we don't exceed our time limits. Thank you, Mrs. Borelli. I just want to ask, is this project exempt from CEQA? Because to the best of my knowledge, there's not been a negative declaration, an MND or an EIR. So I would simply like a straight yes or no answer. Is this project exempt from CEQA? And if it's not, what kind of reports are going to be done? Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, I find it absolutely amazing the lack of understanding the color of money. We've got 3 years of funding of road funds to repair Main Street. We've got Measure H dollars and grants to repair the infrastructure. We have the city leftover funding, the PDA tax themselves, to put in some bulb outs. And now, as a phase 3 comes along, if grants are available, if funding's available, that would include some other stuff in the streetscape design. So it's none of those funds can be used for anything other than what's mentioned. Yes, we could fix another water line somewhere else in town, but we have the money to do Main Street repaving. That is our showcase. That's what keeps this town going. That is downtown antique Placerville that Save Old Hangtown wants. They don't get it. This needs to be done. It needs to be moved forward. And you have to hire engineers. You have to hire professionals to have public meetings so that you don't have a runaway, run-amok crowd and get pointed at saying, you guys are just running it down our throats. You know, it's so important that we have the right people here at the time and the right kind of engineering firms to do the studies. So move on. Let's get this thing on and we'll worry about the sales tax initiative later.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Whoops. Okay. There, maybe that's worked. Sue Rodman, Placerville resident and on the Measure H committee. And the Measure H committee has looked at this project and said, if we do not do the infrastructure of water and sewer and drainage under the street, it won't do any good to repave it, because all that will happen is the leakage will continue and it will deteriorate the sub-base and then work up and deteriorate the paving again. So you need to do the infrastructure and do a good job. Not just if the sewer looks like it could possibly be patched and make through. Don't short circuit it. Really do it right so that it will last another 30 years, because if you put in a good sewer line, it should last you another 30 years. If you just go through and put a little patch over the top of it, the next place to break will give you problems. So you really need to do a good job of figuring out what actually needs to happen with the infrastructure under Main Street. And Measure H the committee has been supportive of this project all along. And we have already looked in other meetings at, okay, what things are on hold anyway that we can defer some funding to make sure this one goes through, because it is an important one. It supports all of Placerville, not just the businesses, but the citizens too. You want to be able to go to a restaurant and know that the drinking water you get is safe to drink, and that the sewer is not going to bubble up in the middle of Main Street. You know, that grass was awfully green in Main Street when we were in the middle of the drought. And the old saying is, the grass is always greener over the septic tank. So you just wonder how much leakage there was under Main Street, because that grass was greener than my lawn.
Thank you, Sue. Anyone else care to come forward? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back. I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Comments? I'm going to, I didn't know if the council wanted to address first, but I'm wondering if Pierre or Miss Rebecca, would you like to answer a couple of those questions?
Yes, ma'am. As far as, well, actually, I'll defer the CEQA question to Pierre.
Okay.
And then I can answer the infrastructure and improvement
Okay.
questions.
This project is categorically exempt under the California Environmental Quality Act under existing facilities. I think it's a Class 1 existing facilities. So the rehabilitation, the replacement, the repair, replacement, and the like is exempt. It's not subject to. We do not have to do a negative declaration or environmental impact report because it's existing streets, existing sewer lines, existing water lines. The entire project is categorically exempt. The only situation I can think of where it wouldn't be would be if we all of a sudden, doubled the size of the water or sewer line such that there was a growth-inducing impact to facilitate new development. Then you would have to do an environmental evaluation of that, but we're not doing that.
Thank you.
Regarding the conditions of the existing water and sewer lines, the majority of the cost of the construction is actually associated with, as you can see in your staff report, with the replacement of the extremely deteriorated water system on Main Street. That has been, as Mrs. Rodman so adequately put, that is, it's important to do the infrastructure first before the paving. Right. We couldn't agree more. If you're going to do it right. Right. As a result of that, that became our top priority, was the water lines, and the second were the sewer lines. We actually have a few pipes that are actually crushed in place in the street. They've managed to maintain their shape, and bless their hearts. And what we've proposed as a result to fix those is we've proposed a sewer lining, which essentially creates a new pipe within that pipe. The lifespan of the lining is actually about 50 years, which, as you can imagine, far outlives the paving.
Right.
So, if when it comes down 50 years down the road, we have to replace it, we've done Main Street another time or two since then. So that's kind of why we went with that approach, in addition to the fact that it's about 1/3 the cost of actual replacement. I'm a huge advocate for SDR 35 for sewer line pipes. Unfortunately, it is considerably more expensive, and this was a better use of the available funds, was to take care of it using the lining. As far as the cost of construction versus the consultant fees, that is an inaccurate statement. The consultant fees are far less than either phase of the construction, and that their fees are for the total of both phases, whereas the cost for construction, and I'm going to have to refer back to my staff report here, the cost for construction for the phase 1, the water and sewer line replacement, is approximately $795,000. And the construction for the rehabilitation portion of phase 2 is approximately $592,400 and some change or so. Phase 3, the cost of the construction is right around $240,000, $250,000. REY's total contract amount is right around $320, something like that. So as you can see, that is far less than any of the individual phases, and that covers the design and all the public outreach and everything for both phases and portions of conceptual layouts for phase 3. So as far as their contract goes, they have been doing what we as staff feels is necessary, and not anything beyond what we feel is necessary to move the project forward and get the necessary public input. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Mr. Morris, did you?
I was just going to mention the comment regarding if we do the bell tower, or there's going to be a bus stop there, et cetera. We will have more public meetings on that. That will all come out. We're not proposing that right now. That's why we're waiting a year to do it, so that we can go through that discussion and determine what does happen there. I will say that if you review our downtown streetscape plan, Main Street plan, it does show that area used as a bus stop. Right. So this is not something that's new being proposed that way. In the interim, when this project is completed, the bus stop will remain at the location where it is now, with some improvements actually, so that it should work a little bit better. That I think we're still planning on doing those, right, Jim? So it will work better. So for example, it hopefully will not stick out into the driveway when the buses stop there in the future. We'll make some changes. The driveway going into the parking lot, sorry. Okay. But behind Historic City Hall. So all of that will come out with us. By moving it back to this phase 3, it gives us a whole year to go through all this analysis and determine and have more public meetings with the public. Let them help us determine what is best for that bell tower plaza. Again, we are going to start with the existing plan that was adopted by the City Council to show this is our Main Street plan and this is what we want to do. I agree, things change over time. For example, as you recall, when we first started this project, it showed diagonal parking on a certain area of Main Street in the conceptual plan. We determined, looking at that, there's no way diagonal parking would fit in those areas. There just wasn't enough room, and there was no benefit to it. We eliminated that. We'll do the same thing as we look at the plaza and other areas, and we've done that along the way. If things do not work, and that's why I want to compliment REY. I think they've done an excellent job of getting the public input, and Matt Boyer for what he's done in helping with that. I think the public meetings have been great. There's been good discussion. We've made changes based on that. REY is meeting with certain property owners that have questions about how things are going to work. They've gone above and beyond to make sure that they try to include all of the public input to the extent that they can. And I think that I was looking at the staff report that Rebecca prepared, and the fact that it talked about, I think it was a year ago now, about when we started talking about this. I had no idea what I was getting into, I don't think. But it's kind of, we knew that there was going to be some infrastructure that would have to be done. It's turned out to be more expensive than what we thought. And when there's additional things that have to be done, there's additional engineering that has to be done also. Talking about the above ground, the streetscape and et cetera, we talked about all along from the very beginning. My first meeting with PDA that I met with them, I mentioned we were looking at the paving, and I did say that we were also looking at the bulb outs at that time. So from day one when we introduced this to PDA, I mentioned that the bulb outs were going to be part of the project. It's something that was funded by PDA, by their taxing districts that they put in place many years ago, and that was something that was there for them. Unfortunately, as we've gotten into it, we've determined things such as the ADA ramps that are required when you do the paving have also increased the cost. And you know, when you look at the benches and other things, the street furniture, yeah, you can argue any amount is some amount, but they're really a pretty small part of what we're doing. And the fact that we're working with the Community Foundation to look at this display of historic artifacts in those bulb outs, I think it fits great with Placerville, and it's a great project. And hopefully we can pull all that together and working with them, but they get their grant and we can make that work. So, thank you.
Thank you. I also want to really emphasize that Mr. Smith made it sound like they brought in all these, you know, he said they had 4 consultants and we were paying all this money, but I too have to say that I have attended all those meetings, and I think that this REY firm has just done a stellar job. The meetings have just gone so smoothly in comparison to some that we've had. I mean, they're just, to me, they are just bending over backwards to make everybody happy. And that's a real difficult thing. and also them appearing at these public hearings, it's not additional. It was built into the contract. And that contract amount has always been before the public. I mean, so they all knew, you know. Anyway, I just, again, want to commend that group and Matt Boyer and everyone who's been involved on these meetings. They've just been great, I think, in presenting information. Anyone else would like to have any comments?
I have a question for Rebecca. You referred to SDR 35. What is that?
It's essentially plastic pipe. It's a...
so that's what you would replace with?
Yes, it has a lifespan of about 100 years.
Oh.
And it's easier to maintain, it's easier to clean, and it's quite durable. Much more so than our existing clay pipes, and much more so than the Orangeburg that we have scattered throughout. Yes.
What is the liner made? What is that made?
The liner, they basically do a small excavation in the street and they put it into the system. And
I mean, what's it made out of? What? Is it a plastic type of plastic?
Yeah, essentially it hardens up into a plastic.
It's an extruded product, doesn't it? They kind of throw it in there and it's like liquid.
It goes in there and it balloons up and it takes the shape of the pipe and inside the existing pipe and it creates a new pipe.
Oh,
I've seen that on HGTV.
So we are not we're not expanding the size of the sewer pipe at all, but we are expanding the size of the water line. Is that correct?
We are doing some areas, yes, where we are. That's my recollection.
Some are really small, I thought.
The water line is being gone from 6 to 8 inches.
I thought that there was discussion about increasing a water line size.
There is. We are doing some size increase.
Okay.
And before I am done, I just wanted to commend Rebecca on the staff report. I really appreciated it. I appreciated the detail and the options that you gave us and how you kind of chopped it all up and made it easy for me to understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. With that, I will call for a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the consulting agreement with REY Engineers as stated in the staff report.
I will second that motion.
Okay, and that will involve the 3 items that were
Options 1, 2, 3, recommendations 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. Is there a second?
I seconded it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Roll call.
Mayor Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patton?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next, council reports from other agency meetings. El Dorado Transit. Tricia?
We skipped our January meeting.
I kind of think this is going to be the answer for
Yep.
all of you.
Yeah.
We've all been off.
But I'll still go through it. El Dorado Transportation,
No, we've been off.
we're off on that one too. LAFCO, same, okay. SACOG is vacant right now, and SEDCOR's kind of the same thing. So we'll have reports next time. Well, maybe not until after our February meetings. Yes, right now. We're right here. Okay, so next on the agenda is requests for future agenda items. Any requests from the council? And
Question which could become a request.
okay.
What's the status of the group that's supposed to get together about the courthouse?
Oh, you know what? That's
that
coming. That's
coming up?
coming up in. And that's next on the agenda.
Well, there
Hang
you
on,
go.
hang on.
Wait a second, they're not reading
It
that
is,
for
it
us.
is.
That's embarrassing.
Okay, it's in the quarterly report.
Oh.
Okay, city manager and staff reports, budget calendar, oral report. Mr. Warren.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As you may recall, I emailed a preliminary budget development calendar to you. And that calendar is our plan to develop your fiscal year 2015-2016 budget. Included in that calendar are 3 workshops. The first one is on Tuesday, March 17th from 5 to 8 p.m. And that is our capital improvement program and capital outlay budget development workshop. Basically talk about projects that needs, opportunities, as well as our equipment replacement program. The second one is our regular City Council budget workshop on May 5th from 5 to 8 p.m. Typically, we have one workshop. We do have a backup workshop scheduled for May 19th from 5 to 8 p.m. as well. So I'm just checking to see if those dates will work for the council, and if not, I'd be happy to take other dates from you.
Well, I already filled out my calendar and
I did
it
too.
it worked.
Excellent.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Yep, sounds good.
okay.
Thank you.
Receive and file quarterly project status report. Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is something new that we're bringing to you at the request of Council during my evaluation this year. So this is our first stab at it. And one of the things I wanted to do is find out, is this the type of information you're looking for? Is there additional information that we can provide? Like I say, this is our first one. We'll continue to work on this and update it, et cetera, from time to time. But I wanted to check and see, and if you have any questions about any of these, our staff is here, or I can answer those if possible. So I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Okay. Tricia?
I don't know if this would be a permanent change, because it doesn't pertain to everything, but just for instance, number 1, the Blue Ribbon Committee, and it always has the funding, timing, project description. On something like this, how is that going to be formed?
That's what we're working on.
Okay,
That's what, and we'll be bringing that back to you at your next meeting
okay.
for a proposed formation of that committee. The Board of Supervisors will be doing the same thing, and then you'll vote on it and say, yes, this is how we want to form the
Okay,
committee.
so to be determined.
Right. Hasn't been determined yet.
Thank you.
We'll have some recommendations for you at that meeting, but it hasn't been determined, so.
But the way I looked at this, and I think what you're saying is that this is just to let us know what they are doing. They meaning our staff, and it's what we ask them to do. And I guess I'm going to, as long as I'm talking, I'm going to go ahead and put in my 2 cents. But I think it's great, and I was very, very appreciative of it. This is what I was asking for, and I just think it's very informative. In fact, I learned 2 or 3 things that are happening that I had no idea, and that's why I asked for this,
Yeah,
so we could
good.
be kept, more abreast of what's going on. So, okay, but Carol, I butted in, so you go ahead.
No. I also really appreciate it. I do have so when things happen, like tonight, we just heard that the sewer relocation from Locust to Clay Street because there's not enough money. So then, how will you note that in here? Because here it says engineering work is expected to be completed by February.
Right. And that engineering work, though, is being done through a grant, I believe. Is that right, Dave? Or how's that being funded? You know, on the clay?
For the clay to locust?
Yeah.
Yeah, the design, my understanding, the design is near completion, and that, I believe, was through a El Dorado County Water Agency grant,
Right. I think
the
that's
design
correct,
phase.
yeah.
But there's no monies, they will not fund construction.
So
And
there's funding, there's a minimal amount of funding for construction. However, as I mentioned earlier, it's not adequate, not anywhere near adequate. So what would happen, we will keep that on here as a capital project because we're still working on the engineering, we'll finalize the engineering, and then we'll continue to work on finding funding for the construction of it.
So that maybe there would be another column that says ongoing estimated completion of the whole project. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how this will work.
Oh, for when it would be
The
complete.
next time I see
Right.
this, and then the engineering work is done, you said, okay, well, now it's still going to be on here, but to what end
Right.
will it be on here until it's
And we'll, you know, we won't take a project off here unless it goes away, either by being completed or we determine that, you know, we're never gonna do it for some reason.
Right.
So,
Is there a way that we could actually have this on the city's website?
sure.
I think that would be,
Yeah,
I think it's really helpful for people to see what you're working on at
agree.
any
Okay.
time.
I have another comment, Mayor.
Okay.
Sorry. I wanted to say yes, thank you. And also, I had that written down. The public should see this, definitely.
Okay.
But I like it because there's so many, I mean, right here, we have 42 things. And you don't, oh, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it, it's like, oh, yeah. And it gives us an opportunity to bring it back to the front of our minds, and then we can discuss it further with you, like the hotel, and if we have questions. And it just is kind of, it's handy to have this. I like the format. But definitely, the public should see this, too.
Sure.
John?
I'm no.
You're no.
Good.
Okay. Wendy?
Well, I just second my fellow council members' comments, and I was just blown away by the amount of work and the different avenues that our staff is working on. And I think that's really important for our public to see how much you are involved with in moving this city forward on a pretty lean staff, and that's pretty doggone impressive. So, and like Tricia said, it helps us form questions that we might have on certain things by just keeping us, you know, just informed.
Well, you
and
know,
in the
there's
loop,
there's
so
things that come
appreciate
up
it.
at our meetings, and we talk about them, and then we don't talk about them for 2 or 3 months or 4 months, and like you say, and it's like, you know, then we think about it maybe when we're home and think, oh, I forgot to ask about
Yeah,
thus and
it's
such,
helpful.
and so this way, I think this is just great. Keep up the good work.
Wait, what I mentioned before about another column that might have, what does the council feel about like a estimated time of completion column? I mean, is that reasonable?
Would it be okay, though, if we include that in timing status?
was just
I'm
gonna
just
say,
thinking
maybe
about
it could
how to, I mean, we could try to add another column.
No, I mean,
Under
that's fine.
We-
I just would like to see what
See that
your goal
estimated-
is.
Sure, we can add that information, but maybe just put it under timing. That's kind of what timing and
Sure.
status was meant to be,
Right.
was to tell you when we think we're gonna do the project and when it would be completed. So, we can probably add that in there, or we'll look at maybe making another column, we can maybe narrow up the project description. I
Well-
didn't really wanna go to a wider page if
No.
I can avoid it, so.
Right.
When you did go through this, though, did you look at it maybe in respect to not, you have them in sort of by category, or they're sort of like categorized, but rather than doing that, have it more by time? So the projects that are more timely are up at the top of the list and less timely down at
And
the bottom.
that's kind of what I was thinking, as
Yeah.
a sorting
Yeah.
mechanism.
A
So
sort.
you could have all of the ones for
Right.
2015-16.
We can take a look at that,
That's
right,
right.
understand, yeah.
I
If we
do
did-
like
If
it
we
though a
added
lot.
that date there, then we could do that, sure.
Okay.
We'll work with this, and let's say
Yeah.
your next one will be due back on April, your first meeting in April, so we'll do them quarterly. But anytime you have questions about, if we put them on the website, we'll work on doing updates more than just quarterly, because I don't want the information out there that may not be correct to the public, so.
Yeah.
But we'll take a look at that.
Well, and this will prompt probably more questions from us. Your phone will probably be ringing tomorrow morning.
Which is fine. Yep.
Okay, upcoming items.
Yeah, you have them there.
We have them. Do you want to announce them?
Nothing really to add there. So.
Okay. Items tentatively scheduled for the next regularly scheduled City Council meeting on January 27th include Clay Street funding, Parity Big Cut Roads, Goldbug Park Development Agreement, WPI Phase 2 Co-op Agreement, Dockin Agreement Park and Ride, WPI Phase 2 / El Dorado County Transportation Commission Co-op Agreement, and CABI Agreement.
Light agenda.
What does WPI stand for?
Western Placerville Interchange. Sorry, we use a lot of acronyms.
That's fine. Okay. With that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting and thank everyone for your attendance and input.